where recordings can be available after the event. If anyone wants to grab the opportunity to ask anything right now, now's good. Can you turn your mute off, or is it? Not sure. All right. Thanks, David. Hi. Okay, so you can turn it off. Feel free to say hi when you arrive until we start in 2 minutes. For those who don't know, there's a poll. We'll get the results of the poll just after the intros. It is anonymous, so don't worry. Yeah, seen a couple of, I won't say old faces. Well, I've not seen anyone's faces really, but hey, Angel. Couple of, all right, 9 o'clock.
Hi, Deirdre.
So we're going to, hey, oh, good, the sound works. Yeah. All right, so we're going to start. This is a super exciting topic. It's the first webinar we're doing for the year, so I'm really pleased about what we're going to be discussing today. The AI component is actually quite a massive part of what your role is going to be in the future in terms of what I think. I've been exploring this now for quite a bit over the last, I don't know, probably a month, 2 months, something, and been playing with it a lot. And it's quite addictive, actually. You kind of go through the process. By the way, if anyone wants to introduce themselves on the chat, please do that. So today I'm going to show you how to do one component, which is the business requirements, down to user requirements and solution requirements. It is quite, let's say, a pivotal thing that we do as BAs. It's not the only thing, and I do want to make that very clear as we go through this. This isn't going to be all of your job that you do. This is going to be much bigger than, your job as a BA is much bigger than just requirements. So if you've only been doing requirements, you're missing out on the profession. All right, so next screen. All right, so just to give you a little bit about myself, just so you know who I am, especially those I haven't seen before. So my name's Deirdre Caren. I'm the founder of Agora Insights. We've been going for 6 years now. So before Craig's and all of that. And the goal was to really help business analysts and business architects with their certification, training, etc. So we have over 9,000 learners at the moment, and we're working in about 90 countries, just over 90 countries. I'm sure Andre will give you the details, but it's quite a lot, and some countries I'd never heard of before. So I feel quite privileged that we've had that experience. So when it comes to business analysis and business architecture, I think we have really a niche in terms of understanding both roles and how these roles are all about information, how we move from current state to future state, how we help organizations make decisions and really look at ways in which they can improve. Now, in this session, I have to give you a little bit of background, and it's not going to be long, so don't worry. I know everyone's chomping at the bits to get to the AI bit. We will cover all of that. But before we can get to requirements, there's some things we have to first understand, because if you're just going to type in user stories and ChatGPT, you're going to get junk. So I'm here to help you get quality stuff out of your AI services. So we're going to look to understand the pyramid, the data, information, knowledge, wisdom pyramid. We're going to look at the knowledge brief, which is something that we do. We're going to look at the requirements classification schema. We're going to look to understand what business requirements, user requirements, stakeholder requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and transitional requirements. And we'll do all of that with AI. And then quality requirements, just some bits of checking on that. And then how to create tables or data, kind of to print out and copy using ChatGPT. Yeah, I got it right this time. So the first thing we're going to look at is, if you haven't seen this before, and for those who have, this is going to be, easy to understand. But as BAs, what we do is we are the conduit of information. We take the current state and we help the business create the requirements to measure the future state and help deliver the future state. And remember, no future state exists until it actually has happened. So we are helping the business move from, current to future. Now, when you're working with AI is not going to provide you with knowledge. It's not possible, right? It's really clever. It does great work. But what AI will give you is some insight into information, right? It's not going to do any analysis for you in the degree that you need the analysis. It does do some analysis, but you've got to really tell it exactly what you want, right? You've got to create the information architecture so that you get the right results. So if you're looking for specific information, you have to ask very specific questions. So you cannot get into doing requirements if you don't have the right way of asking it to do the requirements. Now, welcome to all of those who have joined. Don't forget the poll. I'm going to end it now in 2 minutes. So if anyone is still wanting to fill that up, please do that. So just when we finish this, I'll go through that. All right, so what we're doing when we look at AI, we want the AI to find the data, but we need to feed some data for AI to find data, because obviously the internet is vast. It is massive. And so we have to create some data packet for it to have some constraints. And so then we ask the AI to convert that into information, and then we need to analyze. And I love this because it's bringing the analyst back into the business analyst. Because for many years, we've basically been doing documentation over and over again, but we can certainly change this and make our jobs easier, faster. But you still need to be intelligent, right? So we still need to provide knowledge to the organization. We cannot just take random bits of information and pop them into projects. But if we ask our AI or robot that I sometimes call it, if we ask for information, then we need to create some kind of information architecture for it to work with. All right, let me end that poll. Thanks for those who completed that, and I'll get back to that at the end. I'll share those results. All right, it's still anonymous. So you actually have 10 things you have to do as a business analyst. I call this the knowledge brief. So we've just spoken about, the pyramid, and you have knowledge at the top. So getting a whole bunch of information from AI is not good. It doesn't mean you're going to be a good BA. You still have to analyze that information. You still have to look at that information and truly try and understand this information. So we have 10 steps that we do. We look at the background, we look at the problem statement, we look at critical success factors in our change, root cause analysis, mostly BA work. We look at stakeholders, current state, and then we look at requirements, because what are requirements? This is all the information that we have to the, I can hear someone type in. I might actually just turn you off. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So I'm going to talk today about the requirements, but I'm starting with a caveat, and this is important. I already have this information. So for those who run projects, make sure you have a background statement, make sure you have the problem statement, your stakeholder map, or, who is involved in this project, and your critical success factors. You can decide if you want to do root cause analysis or not, but AI is going to need those 4 things to actually be able to generate these things. So in your knowledge brief, these are, and you can actually use AI for all of these, but you have to, the way that you construct and frame it is going to be different in each case. Next, we're going to look at the requirement schema. So those who haven't seen it before, I'll check on the poll later as we get to the end. But the requirement schema, again, if you are doing any kind of information architecture, the requirement schema is what's going to really help you as a BA understand that not all requirements are equal. Very, very important. And AI needs this schema in order to function. So you have to feed it first, information, right? Numbers 1 through to 5. You then have to create your business requirements, which is number 1. And then from your business requirements, you create user stories. And from your user stories, you create functional and non-functional requirements, and then transitional requirements. And you have to do it in that order because it's not going to give you what you want if you don't. Okay, so it told me to hurry up. So we're on the next one now. Okay, so now let's start with the first business requirement. So I think, let's look at the time. 10 minutes I took just to give you an intro. Now we've got the rest of the time to look at some AI. So we're going to look at constructing the high-level business requirements. Remember, I just showed you that's on top of the pyramid. We want to understand, based on the background that we've developed, based on the critical success factors, the problem statement, which I have inputted here. It's quite long. AI can only take about 1,000 words to 1,500 words to really analyze. So realize that there's some limitations. You can't just send a whole document. You've got to do piece by piece. I'm sure that there's some that can move around that. So we are going to ask it, I'm going to push the button, and you can watch, to create a high-level business requirement for Property Plus, which is our case study. I'm not going into the case study today. Based on the following data, so the data I'm providing it is the background statement, the problem statement, the critical success factors, and the KPIs, the measures. Remember, everything we do in a project has to be measurable. So just to give you some insight into Property Property Plus is a New Zealand company, a fake one, that has about 900 staff, and they wanting to upgrade their system. They've got very manual financial reporting processes. That's just to give you a little bit of insight. Now, what you can see here is it's giving us the KPIs. Because I've used the recording, I'm just going to go back a little bit. And so it's used the KPIs there, but it's also created the high-level requirements. Now, there's something missing on the high-level requirements, which I'll take you through in the next thing, but it's given us some measures. We know in our project, we've got a measure. So this is giving us something to work with, which is fantastic. If we don't have measures, we don't know if we've got anywhere, right? You cannot go on any kind of trip without having something to plan for. All right, so that's what we've created, high-level business requirements based on the case study that I inputted. Next, we're going to look at something called categories. Now, I think BAs don't do this enough, right? So those BAs who don't know of categorizing your business requirements, you really do need to understand this. So we look at the types of requirements. So we look at things like competition, we look at customers, data, external factors, finance, stakeholders, process, regulations or policies, reporting, safety, security, suppliers, technology. I know this isn't alphabetical, these last three, but I added them. Environment, infrastructure, and marketing. So what we do when we create requirements, we want to make sure we haven't missed anything, firstly. And we want to ensure that the type of requirement has an owner, right? Because you have a sponsor of a project, but there's a difference between having a requirement owner and the person who's paying for your project. So for instance, in your requirements, the person who's going to be in charge of the security of the Property Plus case, which is around, upgrading their reporting system and maybe going cloud, that person is going to be different to your sponsor of the project. So we have to understand that there are categories and then there will be specific people involved in those categories. So let me run this. And now you're going to see how the requirements actually change. So now we have requirements that AI is still taking all that information that we've built. It is now looking at the different types of categories of requirements, right? So, and look how long this has taken us, what, 3 minutes? So for those BAs who spend hours doing stakeholder engagement, this is a game changer. So we've got, as you can see, regulations, the type of regulations. Now, what you need to do as a BA, and this is where I say the analyst comes back in, you need to analyze, is this actually made up? Or is this something worth doing? So does it align with our KPIs? Does it align with our project? Is it covering all of our, parts that we're busy trying to figure out? So we got to the last one. So now I ask it another question. Oh no, just the categories. All right. So as you can see, we've got the categories now, and we understand that there will be multiple stakeholders that would own the particular requirement high level, and they would have to approve it. They would have to say, yes, this meets the marketing if that's required. And again, as a BA, you would go, do we really need a marketing strategy for Property Plus? Probably no, because it's internal, unless you're looking at internal marketing, which would be a different situation completely. So let's go further. Now we want to get our KPIs into the category, right? Because we want to know how each business requirement, based on our schema, how we measure that. And we always measure it at that level. We want to know high level, what are we measuring? So let's tell the robot to do this for us. So it's going to run. I did this so that you don't see me doing it live and then it crashes or anything like that. So I did the recording all up front to keep it very simple. So based on the business requirements, include the KPIs. I love the way it says sure, and sometimes it apologizes and sometimes it gives you all kinds of information. So as you can see, it's looking at the categories, and now it's got actually where there's no measure. So you can actually see some of these requirements actually don't have a measure. This is so important because those who've worked in projects and people go, we need this. But if you can't measure it, how are you going to do it? So AI is actually picking up the information I've fed into it at the very beginning, and it's now going, oh, hang on, you haven't put anything in here. That's not good. So we're going to get it to do this, and then I'm going to ask it to build a table so we can just pop it into Excel. I don't have fancy requirements tools. I know you can use Jira, you can use multiple types of tools. So don't be limited by me showing you how you could pop it into an Excel spreadsheet. But I do advise you when you're doing any of this, don't rely on it saving it for you. I have made this mistake a couple of times. So I'm not saying it will just crash on you. I'm not implying that. I'm just saying you have to be very aware that it does actually require you to be quite vigilant on keeping the data and the information in some kind of storage. All right, so we have now spent 8 minutes. I'm just keep reminding everybody of how quick this is. And so now I'm asking it to create a table based on what we've just created, the requirements and the KPIs. Now, you will notice when we look at the table, I have to give it some fields. So I have to say what the columns would look like. And when I first did this, right, I didn't actually ask the AI. I was busy typing everything into an Excel spreadsheet, and I went, I wonder if it can do tables. So this was an experiment the first time I did it. So basically, anything that you can do in Excel, formulas, tables, columns, anything you can do in Excel, you can ask it to create. Now look at that beauty, right? You got the business requirements. You can see some KPIs are more than others. Sorry, I'm pointing at my screen, which won't make sense. But you've now got a table that's been developed. So you can copy this and you can paste this. I'll let it finish. So I'm not happy with this, right? There's some things missing, like who's going to sign it off? How are the categories? Where are the categories? Look at, so I've added the columns here. So I've said add additional columns. So there's a category to that now, based on what we're doing. I've still forgotten to add who that particular owner is, which I do afterwards, who that owner is, but also who is, what's the importance of it, the priority. So is it high priority, medium, low priority? Is it mandatory, not mandatory? For those who know Moscow technique, which is must have, should have, could have, would have, you would use this in your requirements at this particular stage, because you are working with the stakeholders to sign off these high-level requirements. Okay, so it created a table for me. It added the categories. Great. And we are 11 minutes in. Now, create a user story. Now, what I've done for a user story is I actually took a stakeholder group that I analyzed previously in part 5, as I said, of the knowledge brief, and took that stakeholder group and said, how does this stakeholder align with one requirement? Not all of them. do not give too much information to your robot, because it's just not going to process the same level of quality. So remember, when we talk about the requirements schema, each business requirement has one user story. So you can ask it to generate as many as you want. And so don't be limited by the first bit that it does, as you can see. Now, for those, especially those who've been on my training, is that a good user story? Yes, no? Anyone think that's a good user story? You please list the questions. Okay. We might have to come back to that. No. All right. These are bad user stories. Watch what I'm going to do now. And these are because there's lots of things happening. How do you test it? Remember, a user story has to be tested. So I've used, as you can see in here, created user stories from a single business requirement using stakeholder list. And I chose which requirement and which stakeholder list to improve. And then I looked at improving your user story. So I'm saying here, improve your user story by creating the user story atomic. Remember that word, that lovely word? And that word, yeah, we get into that right soon, Stephen, acceptance criteria. The word atomic, so all the words you use in Babok, use it because this is a machine that understands those words. So look at this user story now. Much better, simpler. It covers the who, what, why. And so it's not getting complicated with and then another sentence and another paragraph and all of that. It's keeping it very, very simple. So you're going to have to train it, and again, you're going to have to analyze. This is not something that you can just figure out on your own necessarily and not actually analyze and look. So we're bringing the analyst back in, right? You're looking and saying, is this user story relevant? Is this repeated? Who is the stakeholder that would be associated with this? So you can also, let me just go to the next one. So I just wanted to point out quality requirements, right? So remember, we have these particular terms that we use in Babok. We've got atomic, complete, consistent, concise, feasible, unambiguous, testable, prioritized, and understandable. Use these words to give AI an instruction. It's great because it actually knows what you mean, which is good. All right, so we spoke about these two, and we get into acceptance criteria. So I'll get there. So we spoke about user story, and we spoke about the business requirement first, and then the user story. And so your business requirement is going to set your goals, what you want to achieve as the organization, and you've got to feed it, right? Feed the information, and you can do this several times. It's iterative. I do advise you to do it several times because it does generate different information. So at least 3, try multiple iterations of it and see what sticks, and then keep building that data from there. So we're going to look at solution requirements, and I'm going to show you some acceptance criteria and why you shouldn't do solution requirements first. Why you should actually do your functional, non-functional, and transitional requirements first. And then we'll build more tables. So we've got a little bit of a longer 4 minutes. Yep. So let's start. So create. This is where I'm taking a little bit long to type. And I do make spelling errors, but so I'm creating acceptance criteria for one user story. So we've gone from one requirement to one user story to acceptance criteria. So I've chosen the user story, this one. And now it's just building acceptance criteria for me. Hallelujah. Imagine if we'd had this, 10 years ago. It would have been amazing, or 20 years ago. So there's created acceptance criteria. Now you need this acceptance criteria, right? Because you've got to make sure that what the user has asked for, or what at least what the robot has suggested you do, makes sense. Now, based on the acceptance criteria, I can create functional requirements. So actually, I don't think I brought the other one, but yeah, I'll talk to it in a minute. So you've got create functional requirements using this particular stakeholder user story, using the following acceptance criteria. So it's like a puzzle. This reminds me a lot of Sudoku, which I ended up dreaming about at night, which I dream about this now at night. I wake up dreaming about this. Fantastic. Functional requirements. So unfortunately, you can't just send it a whole batch. It cannot handle the amount of data. Don't do it. You're just going to get junk. So you have to do piece by piece. But now I'm going to copy that same thing again, but this time I'm going to tell it to create non-functional requirements for that user story. Now, for those who remember and those who have gone through Babok, you'll know that non-functional requirements are around basically performance, availability, compatibility. So these aren't things around the functionality, but more around the quality of the experience. And they're actually, I actually think a lot of the times, if you're selling something, this is potentially the most important one, more than the function. Okay, function, I don't know, you can negotiate what's better or what isn't better. Now we're going to look at the transitional requirements. Something we often forget, right? We don't go into what's going to happen after this project, how we're going to be managing this project. So we're looking at user training, change management, integration, data migration, which is a pain point for most organizations. Now, let's create some beauty tables, which we can copy and pop into Excel spreadsheets. And for those who are smart enough, you can say, I spent hours doing this Excel spreadsheet and go to the beach for the day. Don't tell your boss. All right, so I'm giving it an instruction to create a table for the transitional requirements based on those the columns that I've created there. This is what I'm saying. It apologizes sometimes. All right. So when you create a table, you have to be very specific around how you write it. Look how badly I did this. I didn't put in commas, so it couldn't separate the table. Plus, I had to restructure my question. So all of this is around instruction, how you structure your question. So I said, create a table, and and when you do it in inverted commas, this is quite important because it's an absolute, right? So those who understand, if you're searching on Google and you put anything in inverted commas, that means it's an absolute, and they have to be able to access, that has to be in the search criteria. And then obviously put in commas, which is a delimiter component of building anything in Excel or CSV or whatever it might be. I'm just speaking quickly today because I'm not going to go into how all of that stuff works, but for those who do know, these are kind of the rules as to how you would structure it, and based on this information. So now I'm structuring the question much better. And look at that. Then it gives you a status. So I haven't done the best table. Again, you should look at things like priority. You should look at, who owns it, those kind of things. I think the purpose was more to just show you that this works really well. So you build in and build in and build in. I wouldn't ask it to do IDs. You actually need to use that in your system because you capturing piece by piece by piece. And if you catalog it back up to the business requirements, so now I'm trying to add the KPI to this. If you take it back down to the requirement level, go up to the requirement level, you need to see how you trace it. Traceability is really important. So this one didn't give me a KPI because I didn't input the KPIs. It didn't know what the KPI is because remember we had to use the specific KPI from the business requirement to match this user story. So it's added some tips for me. I was like, thanks. So it's added some tips on that transitional requirement based on the user story, the transitional requirement that we have. So it's linked some measures into that, and it's making some assumptions now. And this is why it uses terms like, oh, I can't go back, but well, I can actually go back. The KPI, we would need to define specific measures for success. So, and it just suggests these are the potential measures that we could use. So as you can see, this is great. We have covered in now 23 minutes, high-level business requirements. We've looked at the user stories. We've looked at acceptance criteria. We've looked at the functional, non-functional, and transitional requirements. The reason why I say don't do the solution requirements first is you actually have to roll it up and align it with the business requirement. So you have to see how that worked. I tried doing solution requirements to business requirements at the very beginning. It didn't work at all. So I advise you to follow the path I recommend. But hey, you can have a play, do what you think is best. That's all good. So that's, in a nutshell, in 23 minutes, you've created a set of criteria that you can put into an amazing spreadsheet. So yeah, it's not super sexy, but you've got some things which I mentioned in the tables that you should consider, and you should trace it. So this should be in each of your tables. You need to create a new section for each one and trace it back to your business requirement to keep it really simple. So when you're presenting to your stakeholders, you shouldn't be presenting heaps of stories or anything. You should be discussing the progress based on who the business owner is, what the requirement is, and what is the associated measure with it, which I haven't put in here yet. Oops. So you can see I've got an ID. You need to be able to trace things. So you need to be able to search, because eventually when you've got 20 trillion user stories, you want to find out, which requirement links to it. So you have to have some kind of unique ID per section. Again, for those who know Excel well, know systems well, this should be easy enough. For those who don't, look it up. Ask the AI, it'll tell you how it works, and it'll give you some examples. But as a BA, make sure you got your categories, make sure you got your unique IDs, make sure that you describe it well. You have your measures. Oh, I do have the measures. That's not necessarily a KPI though. Remember, KPI has to have an actual measure. So this is probably wrong. Priority, this is where you'd use things like Agile, etc., and say which of these requirements is going to go onto the backlog. And then you would consider, do we only use those user stories, or are those user stories flexible in the backlog? Because remember, we've got to put in user stories to build the rest, but are you going to prioritize the business requirement or the user stories, or both? Because they're not the same, right? So you need to, I mean, I say you should always prioritize the business requirement because some of them are more important than others. But just as you will hear in Babak, there are circumstances where you have to prioritize other things. Like, for instance, let's say it's Christmas and you have to get a product out at that time because you deliver Christmas gifts or whatever it might be. And so you make concessions around what's the priority at that particular stage. But initially, when you build in projects, you should actually have priorities and understand how things work. And people, when they see spreadsheets, they think waterfall. Often it's not the case, right? It's about information, and it's around how you processing that information in an agile way. It's the way you think. And so this certainly does make you more agile. All right, so it can help organize ideas. Yes. Sana, Andre, adding requirement ID should probably be done as part. Yeah, okay, I did say the traceability. Okay, so I want to remind everyone what's your purpose as a BA. And for those who be arcs, it's the same purpose. You're the conduit of information, right? You're taking information from its raw state into something that the business can use to really understand what the purpose is, what is the change that we're doing, how are we doing this change? And for BAs who just documenting requirements, stop. That's not your job. Your job is to think. Your job is to analyze. Your job is to understand what the problem is. How are you going to solve that problem? How does it work? That's your job. So focus on your job and be good at it. And those who don't know how to go beyond just documentation, you need to study, right? However you choose to do that, you need to study. So I'm going to go back to the knowledge brief and remind you that we spoke about this part 7 today. I understand it's a really important part and it probably takes up the most time. It's really frustrating. But if you can't frame the change, and I'm saying you don't have to sign off anything yet. It doesn't have to be, and hopefully they haven't already signed it off. Hopefully they give you a BA at least a couple of weeks to really understand what the problem is so that you can make good recommendations and at least have the high level business requirements. You don't necessarily have to have completed everything up front. You can start with just the high level ones and get them signed off, and then look at your future state and look at all of those things. Just remember, it's quite difficult with solutions. So do consider how you're going to gather that when you move to this next part, and then estimating what's the best solution. One of the things that AI does quite well is it'll pull up information around different vendors. Should I, buy it, integrate it, look at it? So if you give it enough information around your particular business and what you want to do, it really, does make a difference. Okay, and then the last one we look at is making recommendations. And this is where I say BAs can be amazing because you can influence the entire direction of the change if you know how to do it. If you're just going to run around telling people we should do this, and cannot justify it, then, it's just noise. It's not really, especially if you can't measure it. So you might be right. Your intuition might be correct. But if you cannot measure it and you cannot really put it together as a package, then, I've got a couple of questions from David. What was the initial input? Background statement? All of this: background, problem, critical success factors. You do not need a lot of text. Like I said, it takes, these three. And then when I did user stories, I added this one based on the stakeholder mapping that was done. So you need these three. This one is really great to make sure that the critical success factors actually solve the problem. So this part is quite iterative. You kind of start there and then you go back again, and you kind of move up and down until you get it to where you think it's usable. And remember, this is about making sure that you're delivering something that works. you might have to go back and redo some things and find more information, and it'll adjust as you go through it. Did you review the output for completeness, quality, and usability? How would you grade it? When I first tried, so I'm going to give you the answer. When I first tried, I kind of said create user stories, blah, 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 based on basic things. It was like superficial. It was like saying, you should think of, sending stuff to stakeholders. It was really superficial. I had to actually cover the who, the what, the why, the when, the how, and the where in the background statement. And that's actually what I think takes the longest, because, if you don't have that, and then you have to look at the problem statement, there's a formula you can use for that. So that's pretty easy. And so you can create the formula out of the background statement. So you have to do document analysis. Now that sounds really boring, but the way that you do document analysis under the background statement is around interviewing, gathering past information, etc., putting it into text and starting to build that information out. There are tools for that as well. The limitation, as I mentioned, is that you can only really input 1,500 words or characters. I'm not sure if it's words or characters, but you're limited. So it's basically, 2 pages of information. So you have to summarize everything down, which means you've got to take as much as you can and condense it and summarize it and then put it in. But you have to cover these 3 things to start. If you don't have this, you're going to get a whole bunch of sexy junk. So I don't suggest doing that at all. So that's really, that's it. I hope that you do try. Do you have any questions? And I'm going to go back to the poll. I'm going to show the results of the first poll. And then I'm going to ask you one more poll to see if you've changed your mind. So I had an idea of how many people know the requirement schema. That's great. And then, do you think AI will press? Okay, good. Maybe. All right. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to share the last poll just to see what you think now after all of that work. Okay, share. Give me a minute. Close this one. All right, so if you don't mind filling that out, then I can share the results with everyone else. Great, thanks, Stephen. There'll be a recording. Yes, there's a recording. Yeah, definitely try it. Make sure you got good information though. All right, so thanks for those. So 40%, well, no, 74%, sorry, 40 out of the 54 who responded said, no, I agree with you, actually. When I first looked at this, I thought, oh my gosh, there goes the BA role. Anyone can do the requirements. And then I went through the entire process and the entire journey, and I realized actually you need an analyst to do this. This is not a simple piece of work. Everything that we talk about in Babok, you have to do. This is just going to make it quicker for you, which means you're going to save the business time and money, and you're going to save yourself that pain of trying to gather stakeholder information and all of that. I'm not saying you will completely eliminate that component, so please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but you can start to use things like surveys and various other ways in which to capture data, because remember, it's all about capturing data, and then feeding that data back into AI to give you some great results. Yeah. All right. So any other questions? So I just want to say there's a couple of people. All right. So remember, though it's general chat box. It's not tailored to BA. That's correct. You're 100% correct. I have looked at the various, things that I'm doing. It seems to really understand some of the principles of business analysis. And I find that very great. I mean, it shows you business cases as well. So it really is a good tool, but I agree. It's still limited. It's not designed for BAs. It's designed for providing you with information. And so you're going to have to still do some work to figure that out. And open AR. Okay. Let me just go back. I think there was a question that somebody kept asking. Oh, does it provide a Scrum complexity grade? You have to maybe explain what you mean by that question. To help with schedule. Oh, yes, it does schedule. It's fantastic. As I say, you still got to copy it, and you still got to give the right input, and you still got to load it into your calendars or whatever it might be. So there's some, but see if Teams has AI, because you could potentially do it in there. I know Microsoft has had some challenges, but yeah. Patrick, very interesting webinar. Thanks for sharing. I was exposed to the business. Yeah, Babok is great. So Babok can be dry, but it's really good structure. And I've said that for years, really good structure for BAs to consider. Potentially, Graham. All right. Okay, so any other questions that anyone has? I hope you found that informative. I hope you found that you can do some of this. Do go to our website. We will share a link, and you can kind of watch the replay if you want to, and it was too quick for you. And yeah, I think it will certainly change the way we work in the future. What is the time? Oh, we're actually early. Yeah. Okay. So, Chris, you have a question. I know you just, sorry, that's a clap. Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you again. Okay. So if anyone wants to show their face and ask a question directly, please feel free to do so. I see. How would this be adopted considering confidential? Okay, so actually that's a really good question. My suggestion is just use a false name. Super easy. You just have a project that has its own name, and doesn't relate to a specific business or roles, and you just kind of create a pseudonym for it, avatar, whatever you want to call it. I think that would be the best way. I did think about that, and I thought, no, it's best to actually put in some projects, specifically things like legal projects or, hypersensitive. You can still use it as a tool, but use a completely different case, and, don't assign it to the business directly. I'm not saying that will solve all your problems, but that's certainly one way to do it. Let's see if there's anything I've missed. Yeah, question was. Seems all right. Yeah. Okay. So if there's no other questions, I'll probably, let me share the results. of this. So most people think, no, AI won't won't take over the role. And after some personal investigation, I 100% agree with that assumption. Corey, go have a look on our site and go look at the knowledge brief, and you'll get some insights from there. Yeah, that is not an easy exercise to create and structure a background statement. Also have a look at our blog posts. So we do training on that because it needs a little bit of work, but do have a look at the blog post, look at all of that information that we have. It's free to use. Go have a look and see, just see how it works and see if it kind of is what you're thinking and looking at. But you do have to, you definitely do have to make sure that you understand that well. So if you're going to spend any time learning anything about AI, learn how to structure your entire thing, how to structure your background, your problem, etc. very well. That's probably your most important task. Okay. So I think I'm going to end the session, as it seems like everyone's kind of done now. Anyone still here? Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. It's been great seeing you all. And hopefully, for those who don't know, I've got the business architecture version of this tomorrow. If you're interested, I do advise for those who know business architecture, because we, just like BA stuff, we're going to kind of go into the detail. All right. So have a great day, morning, evening, whatever it might be. And see you soon. Stop the share. Bye, Angel. It's good to see you again. It's been a while. It has, hasn't it? It's been like...
Yeah, it has. And I'm putting my knowledge to good use. So thank you very much.
Oh, good. Yes, it's actually great, because now it really does justify the structure. I was super happy about it. It's probably the nicest thing. Let me stop the live stream. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully give it a go, try it out and see how it all works for you. See if it works.
Yeah, I'm probably going to ask it the meaning of life first, though.
I have done that. It doesn't give you an answer, but it doesn't say 42 either.
Oh, boo. All right, well, I'm hoping to make the architecture class tomorrow as well, because I'm turning my attention to business architecture next.
Good. You'll find it very rewarding.
Yeah. I may have a meeting that I can't reschedule, so if I can't make it, I'm hoping to at least see the recording.
Okay. Good. Okay, for those who want to see any additional information, please go to my website, agorainsights.com. You should find the links, on Eventbrite and whatnot. So please just go and have a look. It's there's blogs, there's heaps of stuff. So do a little bit of exploration and you'll find it. Okay, I'm going to end the meeting now. Nice seeing everybody. Bye. And good luck with your AI.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. I don't even know who's speaking to me.
Yeah, Marieri, I'm a student on your course. Yeah.
I just can't see your face. I can hear this echo as well. I keep thinking it's me talking. Yeah, watching the video. Anyway, great. So good luck with your learning. Are you going to catch up soon? Probably, hey?
Yeah, I will.
So you'll find that, because you study in the Babcock, right?
Yes, I took a course to do the CCBA. So yeah, I'm on that now.
Oh, good. So you can definitely use this based on your learning from there, which is fantastic.
Definitely. So helpful.
Yes.
Thank you.
So follow the steps and you'll get it right.
Would do. Thank you.
Okay. Well, happy learning.
Bye.